Hi everybody, in this video I want to do an introduction to polynomials. And polynomials are our chance to start bringing in exponents besides one here. So we're going to start looking at examples that have squares, cubes, and so on as well. So let's go through some key definitions. So the most basic type of polynomial is actually a monomial. So what is a monomial? A monomial is a term that contains only whole number exponents. Okay, so just as a little side note here, so we're not doing, so no negative exponents. And no fractional or decimal exponents here. And no variable or variables in the denominator. So they're relatively simple examples, but not as simple as linear. So when we think about linear, we didn't have any exponents besides one, right? So now we're kind of looking a little bit deeper. So these are not quite as simple as our most simple examples in algebra. They're kind of like the second step up. So we do have exponents now, but we're going to keep them as whole numbers. So we're not going to talk yet about negative exponents or fractional or decimal exponents. And there's not going to be any variables in the denominator. Now, all those things do exist in mathematics, of course. They're just not called polynomials. So we have different names for different types of expressions and different types of equations. So this is what we're looking at here. So bringing in some exponents, but that's about as complicated as it's going to get. So another thing about a monomial, just to kind of clarify it as well, is we're going to see that a monomial is a polynomial in only one term. So we're going to define now what a polynomial is. And a polynomial is basically could be a string of these monomials. So it could be just a single monomial, or it could be multiple of them added or subtracted together. So a monomial or a sum and or difference of monomials is called a polynomial. So poly typically means many. Now, obviously, it could also be just a single term, but typically with polynomials, we tend to see many terms here. So basically, it's just the adding and subtracting of terms, and those terms can have exponents on them that are whole numbers. We also have binomials and trinomials that we define. So a binomial is a polynomial with two terms. Bi means two. If you think about a bicycle has two wheels. And a trinomial is a polynomial with three terms. Okay? And that word tri, or that prefix tri means three. So if you think about a triangle, means it has three angles, or a tricycle means it has three wheels, right? A cycle would be like a wheel. So those are specific kinds of polynomials that we have, but they're all polynomials. And I want to show you some examples so you have a better idea of what this is. Okay. So here are some of the more simple polynomials. You could just have the term z. You could have something like 2x squared. I could have 1/2 y to the 4th power. I could have just the number -10. Okay, and so on. I'll do a fraction one too. I could have 1/3 x. Okay? So these are all polynomials, and also specifically this style here is a monomial because it only has one term. Now, other examples of polynomials could be something like z minus 4 or 2x squared plus 3x, or 1/2 y to the 4th minus 2/10 x squared, -10 plus x, or 1/3 x minus 4. How about, well, we'll do 4.1. Okay, so notice here for each of these, you have two terms. So remember, terms are separated typically by addition, but you can also think of it as separated by minus signs as well, because you could always change those subtraction signs to adding a negative. So we have two terms here. One term is the z, the other term is the -4. Here we have 2x squared and positive 3x, 1/2 y to the 4th and -2/10 x squared, -10 and positive x, and 1/3 x and -4.1. So these are all polynomials, but they also happen to be examples of binomials. Which means they have two terms. And of course, you could have examples that have more than two terms. So maybe I have something like z squared plus z minus 4, bringing in three terms, 2x squared plus 3x plus 1, half y to the 4th minus 2/10 x squared plus y, -10 plus x minus x squared, or maybe 1/3 x minus 4.1 plus 5x cubed. So here are examples that each have three terms, right? So here's our first term, z squared. Here's our second term, z, and our last term, -4. Here, 2x squared, 3x, 1. Here, 1/2 y to the 4th, -2/10 x squared, y, -10, x, -x squared, and then 1/3 x, -4 and 1/10, and positive 5 and x cubed. So these all have three terms, and they are called specifically trinomials. Okay. Now, polynomials are also all these things. So if we're just talking generally, I may say, hey, let's look at those polynomials, or let's do some examples with polynomials. So all of these are still polynomials. We also just give specific names to things that are one term, two term, or three terms. So if you hear someone mention specifically, oh, a binomial, you know it's a polynomial with two terms. Or if we say trinomial, we know it's a polynomial with three terms. And particularly as you get into more advanced math classes, we tend to do a lot with binomials and trinomials in particular. So we do like to kind of give them special names. Now, if you have an example that is more than three terms, so 4 or more terms, we don't have a special name for it. But you can have polynomials that are that long, right? So another example I could give of a polynomial could be x to the 5th minus 4x to the 4th plus 1/2 x to the 3rd minus 2x squared plus 5. Okay. So here's another example of a polynomial, a much longer one. And we typically don't give a special name to anything over three terms. So you can just call it a polynomial, and that would be fine.